Interesting conversation with Tunji Andrews on pensions. And like we say in this side of the world, Eku Palemo school fees. And it's a normal greeting that we have for parents, in Nigeria as they prepare for resumption. And most schools in Lagos, and I think most of Nigeria, are going to be resuming next Monday. And for example, right after this show, will be going to do some last-minute shopping for my own son as well. So this morning, my guest and I will be discussing the school fees season. Yes, because first term you get to pay everything, developmental fees, all the fees, and if you're registering a child newly, it's a lot of money. Now, my guest, his name is Onome Ohwovoriole. He's a lead analyst at PlusTvAfrica. Prior to that, he worked at Bamboo Systems Technology and Nairametrics. Thank you, Onome.
Good morning.
Good morning. One more thing before we start. Please, can you pronounce your last name to the world and then tell us what does it mean?
Okay, so it's pronounced Ohwovoriole. Okay. So you have to take it slowly. And you know Nigerians can be impatient. We have to be slow. Ohwovoriole.
Okay, and what does it mean?
And it means that if you eat yam alone, you choke.
If you eat yam alone, you choke.
Yeah.
I really like Nigeria. I don't know why many of us, we have now tried to funkify our names, but our names have very strong, deep meaning. That's an interesting one.
It's hard to funkify it. Really.
It's hard to funkify.
Yeah.
Have you tried to funkify it?
People have failed, really, so I had no choice.
Okay, so let's go to the topic of the day, school fees season.
Yeah.
How do parents realistically plan for their children's school fees? Because sometimes it always just seems like it's something that just crops up on you, but we all know that our children are going to resume back in school after the long holiday in September. How do we begin to realistically plan for it?
Okay, so planning starts from the get-go. So the same way when a couple are expecting a child and you do antenatal care, people are buying clothes, buying coats. From the moment you are expecting a child, that ideally is the first time. That's when you should start keeping aside money for fees, right? But let's say you have, 5 to 20-year-old child. It should be something you keep aside money for on a monthly basis, because you know that every 3-4 months you're paying school fees anyway. So you must well keep aside money for that on a monthly basis. So that's the easiest way to plan for it. And I would say that particularly if you have kids overseas or they're schooling overseas, then you also should be looking at the FX side of things, really, because that even hits you harder, right? So imagine if you paying, say, £10,000 or £20,000, and you have that movement from, say, 500 to 700, or let's say move from 700 to 900. That's a 30% increase, roughly, about 50% increase, roughly. That happens in a space of months. So that even hits you harder than your regular school fees, because generally with the system in Nigeria, fees don't move 100% overnight. Most schools tend to either increase fees gently, or they wait for like 4 or 5 years and then go boom. So that really should be a monthly thing that you plan for.
So for the people that that have children abroad, what do they need to do? Okay, Nigeria, now you say, okay, I should put a monthly, put some money away every month. So when I put some money away, I open an account separately and put the money there, or do I put the money in a way and I say, or do I arrange with the school and say, okay, there, Bugbulaye Grammar School, can I have your school account and be putting in money? How does that work?
I think, okay, let me start with primary and secondary school. I think for those, if you ask, it's a bit tough, but it's doable if you ask. Some schools might let you pay monthly. Right? Some schools might let you pay ahead, and if that's available, that's something you should do. Particularly if parents or the guardians have bulk sources of income, so maybe an annual bonus or some annual allowances that they get. It's for education, really. I always tell clients to channel that bulk sum towards kids' education, because it hits you less, really, than you wake up and maybe we're in first term, right? And you're going to pay all these bills. By December, January, you're in second term, you're paying bills again. So that's where easiest way to plan, really. And I would say go beyond just keeping the money in the bank account, because your bank accounts would do maybe 2%,
Okay.
right? 1 point something, 2%.
So what are the options if I don't put the money in an account?
Yeah, you can invest. You could look at mutual funds. You could look at shares, local or foreign. You could look at real estate.
Did you say shares?
Yes, you can look at shares.
So if I put money in shares and I need it in, how does that work?
Yeah. So if you were planning for a decade, so let's say your child is maybe 5 years old, and let's say in 15 years I want to send my child to XYZ university.
Okay.
Right? And let's say currently it will cost me, say, 12 million today if I'm sending my child to that university, and I have 10 years to plan for it. What you can do is you adjust the amount for inflation, right? Then you divide it by 12.
Okay.
Right? Then you divide that again by 12 months. So already you have a monthly idea of, if I follow this monthly and I do this for a decade or so, this is where I'm going to arrive at, right? And so you can take that sum and then you invest that sum in a variety of things. Because one of the advantages people have with kids' education really is because, especially if the child is young, if you have that 10 to 15 year time or period, you can invest in a variety of things. You're not pressured, So with immediate school fees, you're pressured. You need to pay now. But if I have a 10, 15, 20 year plan, I'm not pressured. And so I can pay gradually and I can get towards the goal. Okay.
You make it, the way you talk about it, you make it sound so easy. But I don't know, like with the shares thing.
Yeah.
How do I know, okay, this is, with shares rise, fall, how do you now begin to manage that? If, for example, you've planned that, okay, you have this 10-year thing, and then this particular share like you have invested in has fallen, and then the money you had estimated that you were going to make from it, what happens then?
Yeah, but remember that you have a basket of things you're going to invest in, right?
Oh, okay.
And so shares are not the only thing. So you have high-risk investments, you have medium-risk investments, you have low-risk investments. So you're doing a blend of everything. And typically you shouldn't do more than 30, maybe 40 in high risk, right? Shares will fall into high risk. The rest is medium and low risk. So really, that's one. And then the second way is you have investments that cover the broad stock market.
Okay.
Now, if you do individual shares, I like to give this example. The Apple is hot today, right? Because everybody's using an iPhone, the yuppie people. 10, 20 years from now, Apple could be like Nokia. So it doesn't mean you shouldn't invest in Apple if you want to do so. But you must have representation that covers the broad stock market. Because generally speaking, as if you look at the graph for the US market, right, that it goes up. It doesn't go in a straight line. You have ups and downs and ups and downs. But if you look at the 20 or 30 or 50-year graph, it's upwards.
Okay.
So with that and with the time you have, so investing, I say, is like driving. You constantly would adjust your movement. Sometimes you're fast, sometimes you're slow. Sometimes, maybe if you're young, you know that there's a checkpoint here and your papers are not complete, so you dodge here and all that. So it's the same thing. You constantly would adjust what you're investing to how things are.
It's
easy.
Yeah, but you make it sound so easy.
It is. I'm serious.
To be a parent, you truly have to be financially literate to understand, okay, there's so many options. Because the truth is, guess what? Many parents now, it's school fees season, and they are going to go and take loans and borrow money, to quickly try and sort that, pay back. And
then they borrow again when the next one comes. But you see, here is the thing about, let me tell you the first thing I tell clients. Most of the mathematics that you need to do for your personal finance can be done on what we call the market person's calculator. You know those simple calculators when you go to the market?
Yes.
You don't need complex formulas. There are complex parts, but for the average person, you don't need a complex mathematical, you don't even need an advanced mathematical degree, right? So, but speaking specifically about kids, sometimes one has to take a hard decision. So the hard decision could be, I'd love to send my child to Harvard or Oxford. Even if I earn 4 or 5 times what I earn now, I still might not be able to do that. So what are the next best options? It could be somewhere in Nigeria.
Yes, one of the best universities in Nigeria.
Nigeria, right? Another option would be to say, maybe I should just have one child because that's what I can afford. And that's hard because
That's hard.
We are Nigerians. People look at you like.
I was about to say that because that's
another one. How can you have only one child?
That's
just
hard.
add
That's
one
hard.
more. Add,
but you know what? Let's come back and
Yeah.
now some parents haven't started the school fees season.
Yeah.
Let's just assume that some people have taken their entire salary. Some have even done the famous thing we do in Nigeria, Ajo contribution. They've contributed some money and they say, okay, I'm collecting in September because my children are going to school. So they've done that now. They've taken loans. Let's start afresh. If now they're supposed to do this better, what should they begin to do starting from September 11?
Okay, so starting afresh, the first thing is to pay back your loans.
Okay.
Have a good repayment plan. The second thing is to do a broad analysis that, look, can I conveniently pay
the school
fees from my current income?
Yeah. I think.
And it's a hard conversation, especially if you look at it that, look, if you are pressured at the moment with what you currently earn to pay those fees, then maybe one has to consider some other school that falls within budget. Now, I know that it's a hard conversation. It's a hard conversation to have with a child that you are in XYZ school and I'm moving you and the child asks you, why?
Why?
Right? That's hard, but it's better to have that hard conversation than to be constantly pressured, because I joke with my friends that have kids. You feel that September period, everybody's pressured. Like, you can see the mental pressure on them that, look, I've just paid school fees. I don't want to hear anything about money right now. So it's a hard conversation. But it's best done, it's like kicking a can down the road. Eventually, they're going to have to get rid of the can. So you must as well sort out the can. So it's best done now rather than to be on. Because that pressure will only increase, right? People would say, higher. Let me just face the pressure now to get better later. But what if it doesn't get better?
What does pension management have to do with school fees? Tunji Andrews was here earlier and he talked about pensions. What does having to manage my pensions have to do with preparing for school fees at the same time?
Okay, I think that the closest intersection you would have, people are having kids much later, right? So maybe for our grandparents by 15, 16, early 20s, most people had several kids. But now you're having kids later. So, and why I'm keen on planning is that by 40s, 50s, people are at a sort of, what's the word used now? You are at the intersection financially. Some people are transiting from paid employment to starting their own business. Some people are transiting from living in a rented accommodation to, let me start building my own place, or let me start paying a mortgage. Some people are transiting towards retirement, right? Because people are retiring earlier these days. So you really don't want to be a situation, but for a lot of people, by their 50s and 60s, they probably would still be training kids, right, in school. And so the question is, if you are reliant on your pension by then, solely or majorly, it means that you're going to be taking from your pension
to
pay fees. But the reality of things is that your pension, especially in Nigeria, will just make you comfortable. Remember that your pension is not planned for many people, right? It's you.
Just you.
With the modeling that, okay, by 50, 60, 70, this is where you'll be, this is how much you need, and this is what you get. That pension doesn't accommodate your kids a lot of times. So the fact that if you do the modeling and you see that, look, by 50, 60, I'm still training kids in school, it means that before I hit 50, 60, I need to double up, so to speak, so that there's a comfortable buffer. So when I'm retired, I know that, okay, I'm not spending, because by the time you remove school fees from pension, a lot of times, except it's a really comfy pension,
the money are finished.
The money are finished.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So that's where modeling and planning generally comes in, really.
Okay, so let's talk about people who don't, who are waiting to have children. Should they begin to also put money away for school fees?
Yes, one of the advantages generally with personal finance is time is a major asset. So that's why we keep hitting that, look, when you're in your 20s, yes, you can ball and have fun, but you should plan. Because if you are reckless in your 20s and you sit up in your 30s, you've lost a decade. And that decade will translate to millions of naira that you could have had. And so if you do the typical Nigerian style, which is people say, okay, when I'm married, I would sit up and be serious. yes, it happens. People sit up. It's just common sense. You have
Yeah.
responsibilities, right? But remember that those responsibilities translate to higher expenses. So you're not just taking care of yourself. You're taking care of your family. You need a bigger food budget, a bigger house. You might need a car and a driver. So adding all those things means that you have actually would be spending more. So it's easier and cheaper when you are single, when you are young, in your 20s, right? And there's a modeling you can show that by 20, and if you have a 10, 20-year planning period, and you keep on that path, you know, you'd have a significant sum of money kept aside, invested, than waiting till, or what we do when I blow. But nobody knows when that blow period will come or when.
And then, you know, like we're talking about Nigeria earlier on, about how things just happen. It's not just about the forex trade. You know, with COVID, a lot of things, some people lost their jobs, they haven't been able to get, so you can't really just wait till that blowing moment comes through. Okay, because we're almost out of time, let's just run through everything again. So for parents paying school fees, if you have taken a loan, pay back your loan, 1.
Yeah.
2.
Save monthly.
Save instrumental payments.
Instrumental payments or paying ahead if you can afford it.
3.
4, if you don't have kids but you plan to have kids in the future, start from the get-go to keep aside. Work out the cost. It's not hard. You can do it with a simple calculator. Work out the cost, adjust for inflation, and break it down and do it monthly. 5th one, just before I forget, if it's available, it's also a hard conversation, but if the grandparents are willing to chip in something, I say, please take it.
Everybody, let me tell you something.
If
it is Nigeria, it's not only grandparents. Some people have even come to meet me for their own children's school fees. So in Nigeria, everybody donates. Everybody, your uncle, your auntie, I'm going to school. Uncle, I'm going to school is a Nigerian thing. Everybody puts into the basket. Even that's not a consistent thing.
Yeah, but this is a different thing. If the grandparents can say, okay, you know what, I will take care of my grandchild
to secondary school,
to primary school education. So that's a breeder, right? So if they offer it, just take it. You know, I tell people, it doesn't mean you are lazy. Yeah. Right? It's just, I mean, let me shock you. Yeah. I don't have kids. I have an account for my unborn kids. Wow, that is the most important financial decision for me. Because I know that barring any crazy life happenings, I'm good. But if I don't start now, I can't do Oxford or Harvard. And so it's best to start from the get-go, and you are consistent. So if that's it, consistency, discipline, and you're good. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Onome, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
I hope we'll be able to have you again, and I'm going to have a private conversation with you after this.
Having me again. Pray for good traffic.
Yes,
good weather and good traffic.
You really don't like to go out, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
It has really been an enlightening time. Thank you very much I hope you enjoyed, and you learned something from this segment. I'll be right back with John and Helen to wrap up the rest of the show. Stay with us.